Hello, I'm Jordan Rich. Welcome to this Boston Cured Cancer Club program focused on successful communication after a laryngectomy. In this program, you will learn about the most proven ways to regain speech after a laryngectomy and how these methods can be used to help you or someone you care about speak once again. While cancer of the larynx is a very unsettling condition, it is also one of the most highly treatable forms of cancer with exceptionally high success rates. Because of the larynx's physiology, the cancer rarely spreads, and when the larynx and vocal cords are removed during surgery, the cancer usually goes too. The vast majority of patients then focus their energies on regaining the ability to speak, developing a new source of sound, and their success rate, once again, is exceptionally high. There is an entire community of doctors, speech pathologists, social workers, nurses, and fully recovered survivors of larynx cancer called laryngectomies, ready to help you regain your speech and live your life fully once again. There is life after a laryngectomy. And that's what this program is all about. Let's start with a look at larynx cancer, the condition that has brought us to this important crossroads. Here's Dr. Richard L. Fabian, the Director of Head and Neck Surgery at the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary.
Cancer of the larynx is sometimes treated with a surgical procedure called a laryngectomy. A laryngectomy may be done in combination with radiation therapy or after radiation failure. During a laryngectomy, the larynx and the vocal cords are removed. The trachea is redirected from its natural path to the mouth and nose, and a new permanent opening called a stoma is surgically created. Caring for this surgically created opening or stoma is very important. Before you leave the hospital, make sure that your medical team has taught you how to properly maintain and care for your stoma.
Laryngectomies breathe through this stoma, and with the assistance of their medical experts and speech pathologists, regain their speech from one of several methods. Here's Glenn Bunting, a leader in the field of laryngectomy speech recovery.
The success rate for laryngectomies regaining their speech is exceptional. In fact, over 85% of all patients communicate effectively within several months of their surgery. There are several methods used to successfully reobtain speech following a laryngectomy. Now, the choice of voice restoration is often based on the patient's medical condition. Selection of the appropriate alternative speech method also depends greatly on the individual's desire and motivation to want to learn. Your medical team will work closely with you to help identify the right voice restoration solution for you.
There are three proven effective methods for reobtaining speech after a laryngectomy. The first method is electrolaryngeal speech. Electrolaryngeal speech uses an external electronic device to create the sound source necessary to speak again. This is the quickest method to implement and is often used as a backup voice by laryngectomies who opt for a different primary method of speech. A second method for reobtaining voice is called esophageal speech. This is a technique that uses the vibrations created by releasing captured air in the esophagus. Quite simply, a form of controlled burping. This technique takes some practice to master, but it is used effectively by 3 to 6% of laryngectomies. A third method is called tracheoesophageal speech, which uses a prosthesis inserted into a surgically created tract between the stoma and the esophagus to restore the voice. Approximately 19 to 31% of all patients use this method. While not all patients can use this method for a variety of reasons, those who do achieve exceptional results. Let's take a closer look at the first method of alaryngeal voice restoration, called electrolaryngeal speech.
Within a few days of surgery, an intraoral type of electrolarynx, that's one with an oral adapter, is introduced. Now, this is a mechanical tone-generating device which replaces the sound source of the voice previously produced by your larynx. A tube, which is attached to the oral adapter, is placed in the mouth, the device is activated, and speech is produced by moving your lips, tongue, and teeth, articulating sounds and words to make speech. Although it takes practice to learn how to speak using the tube, usually patients are able to effectively communicate via this method following a few sessions of voice therapy with the speech pathologist. Once the neck is healed properly, the oral adapter is taken off the electrolarynx and the device is placed against the neck. Now this allows the sound to resonate through the neck tissue, and with proper mouthing of words, speech is once again produced. Some individuals prefer to use an electrolarynx as their primary alaryngeal speech method because it provides an immediate means of communication, it's relatively easy to learn, and doesn't require additional surgery. For others, it can be used as a secondary or backup method of communication once other methods have been established. Now, advancements are constantly being made in this area to improve the sound and clarity of the electronic voice, provide greater volume control, and offer hands-free operation. Bob is here to demonstrate the use of electrolaryngeal speech using an electrolarynx. Using an electrolarynx is the easiest and most common means of speech communication after laryngectomy. Bob?
I've been using this now for about 14 years, and so far it's served me very well.
Using an electrolarynx requires some manual dexterity, and it is a bit mechanical sounding, but is the most effective means of speech restoration after laryngectomy.
Electrolaryngeal speech has been a preferred method of speech restoration for over 50 years and is used by approximately 50 to 57% of laryngectomies in North America. Now, let's hear from the experts about another method of voice restoration called esophageal speech.
Now, esophageal speech is produced by learning to capture air in the esophagus or food tube and move the air past a segment of muscle, producing an esophageal tone, or sound. This tone then becomes the sound source for alaryngeal speech. The esophageal tone ascends into the mouth, where it is shaped into words to produce esophageal speech. This method of speech production can take several months to learn, but it doesn't require the use of an electrolarynx and is therefore hands-free. In addition, this method offers a more natural-sounding voice and doesn't require additional surgery.
Although esophageal speech is more difficult to learn, approximately 3 to 6% of laryngectomy patients successfully use esophageal speech as their primary means of communication. Some advantages of esophageal speech include a more natural-sounding voice and the absence of any internal or external prosthesis. Some of the disadvantages include a greater level of practice. Many patients are limited to short sentences. Also, volume and control of voice can diminish as the patient gets older.
Our volunteer Charlie is going to demonstrate esophageal speech for us. Charlie's going to be taking air into his esophagus, vibrating a muscle there, and producing esophageal tones, which will then be made into words and phrases. Charlie?
Hi, my name is Charlie. I'm speaking to you as an esophageal speech patient using esophageal speech.
Now you can see that it's a very natural sounding means of communication. It does take a little bit more time to learn, but if the patient is motivated, you can see that it's a way of developing functional communication after laryngectomy.
While the esophageal speech method is not for everyone, those who master it report feeling and speaking as well as ever. A third widely accepted and highly effective method of voice restoration is called tracheoesophageal speech. Let's hear from the experts.
Tracheoesophageal speech is accomplished when a silicone prosthesis or valve is inserted into the surgically created puncture tract between the trachea and the esophagus. The patient covers the stoma with the thumb or finger, directing air from the lungs through the one-way valve into the esophagus. As with esophageal speech, the air is directed past a segment of muscle, producing an esophageal tone or sound. This tone becomes the sound source for the tracheoesophageal speech. Depending on the circumstances or physician choice, TEP may be performed simultaneously or as a second procedure at a later time.
The laryngectomy patient works closely with the speech pathologist to become accomplished at generating and modulating sound through the prosthesis. Now, there's no doubt, tracheoesophageal speech takes time and practice to learn, but it's generally regarded as less difficult to master than esophageal speech. Other versions of this technology have adjustable valves for hands-free operation. Here's Beverly to demonstrate tracheoesophageal speech, commonly referred to as TEP speech. Now, for most patients, TEP speech involves the use of a thumb or finger to occlude the stoma, allowing air to vibrate into the back of the throat. Bev?
Hi, my name is Beverly. This is TEP speech, using my finger to occlude my stoma.
As you can hear, TEP speech delivers a more natural sounding voice and allows for extended phrase length. TEP can also be accomplished using a hands-free valve. Now, depending on the patient's condition after surgery, this hands-free valve may be an option. Bev?
Hi, my name is Beverly. This is an example of TEP speech with a hands-free valve. I have been using this form of speech for 12 years.
Hands-free speech looks and sounds like a more natural form of communication.
Tracheoesophageal speech is used by 19 to 31% of all laryngectomies around the world, and improvements to this method are almost constant. Innovation throughout the field of post-laryngectomy voice restoration is possible thanks to the dedicated efforts of researchers, speech pathologists, and physicians like those we've met in this program. The result is that literally hundreds of thousands of laryngectomies express themselves fully, completely, and with the passion they had before their diagnosis and treatment. This is a good time to mention several safety issues that should be addressed. It is important to ensure that medical and emergency personnel are immediately aware of your laryngectomy. Orange laryngectomy awareness stickers are available and should be placed on the windshield of your car. These stickers should be present and obvious in the event you have a medical emergency. Because laryngectomies no longer breathe through conventional means, it is essential to alert emergency personnel that you are a neck breather. Also, there are orange cards that should be in your wallet or purse, identifying you as a neck breather. Remember, swimming can also be a very dangerous and life-threatening event. Under no circumstances should you swim or let water anywhere near your stoma. You'll also wish to cover your stoma while showering. It's important to remember that undergoing a laryngectomy is a life-altering experience, and it is important to try and keep a positive attitude. After surgery, time for healing is needed to let swelling and soreness subside before learning any alaryngeal speech form. Immediately after surgery, it is not uncommon to use a piece of paper and a pen to be able to re-communicate. This can be a sobering reality to the loss of one's voice. Remember that learning to re-communicate will take time, dedication, and willpower. Recovery is a gradual process, but you will, indeed, be able to communicate again, and in most cases, quite effectively. Clearly, cancer of the larynx, while devastating and difficult to accept at first, is one form of this disease that can be managed through effective care, technology, and the motivation of the patient. That's what Bob Merman did several years ago. He was diagnosed with cancer of the larynx. Like most people, he thought he'd never speak or be the same person again. Today, he's a living, breathing, talking success story. Let's meet him.
When I was started out broadcasting as a young disc jockey, interviewing all kinds of recording stars and movie stars and so forth, which was great fun. Eventually moved into one of the major stations in Boston, WJIB, which then was the #1 FM station in the city. And I became manager of public affairs. I had a wonderful time in broadcasting. And then all of a sudden, around 1989 or so, I started to get a little sore throat, a little bit of a, let's say it felt like laryngitis. And I've had laryngitis before. We all get laryngitis every once in a while. But laryngitis generally goes away within a week or so. and this laryngitis just didn't go away. And what it turned out to be was cancer of the larynx. I remember that morning waking up following the operation and realizing that I'm trying to say something and nothing is coming out. And you realize that here you are for the very first time in your life without an ability to communicate normally with a voice. Pretty tough. A couple of days later, you're up and about with a pad and paper and a pencil, and you're writing notes to everybody. For me, that was awful because I have terrible handwriting. So not only wasn't I able to be understood speaking, I wasn't able to be understood writing. So that was pretty bad. So I've written pretty good, so is printing. It's frustrating. It is terribly frustrating. 1 minute, you're up there on top of the world, one of the top broadcasters in the city of Boston, enjoying every single minute of it. And then all of a sudden, you're hit with the thought that you're not going to be able to do this anymore. That is total, complete disaster, at least in my mind. And then finding out that it's not total, complete disaster after all. Most important things that a new laryngectomy patient has to remember is that they have got to remain optimistic, that they have got to understand that it's not the worst thing in the world. It may seem like the worst thing in the world, and in a way it is, but there is a future. But I've always been fairly optimistic, and I guess the optimism in a way paid off eventually down the line. You've got to remain not only optimistic, but you've got to remain in that frame of mind that I am going to do it, but it may take some time. You're not going to put it to your neck immediately and speak the way somebody like me does after 14 years. What you've got to do is practice. Support is so very, very important because you're mentally down. Physically, you may not feel that great, so you really need support. It is so important to have these friends, these family members give you total, complete support. I had a lot of support from my family and a lot of support from friends, and eventually they forgot the way I sound and just listened to what I was saying. If you start forcing it, I joined the Boston Guru Cancer Club for laryngectomies. Full, complete, loving support, because now you're with a group of people who are talking the same way you are, so you're learning from your peers, you're learning from people who have gone through this before you did. And it is so very, very important to join an organization like that. The Boston Guru Cancer Club for laryngectomies, for me, has been a tremendous help. And that's so important. Join a club, you'll love it.
Bob's successful ending is one that repeats itself thousands of times a year in hospitals across the country and around the world. While the news of this disease is difficult to understand and painful to accept, the innumerable patients who have beaten this condition offer more hope for recovery than anyone could ever expect. Be sure to take advantage of the resources that are available to you. Plug into the support systems, social workers, and get to know other laryngectomies who can provide tremendous support when you need it. These support groups are a great way to meet other laryngectomies in the same situation, to explore alternative treatments, learn more about this condition, and perhaps even reach out to others who may need some encouragement in a trying time. You can learn a lot about this community and this condition by visiting www.larynxlink.com or by calling the information hotline for laryngectomies and head and neck cancer patients at 1-800-305-0117. Thanks to all who contributed to this important program. We hope it has helped you or the one you love to better understand the nature and alternatives of this difficult yet manageable condition. Together with modern technology, devoted expert medical care, and your own desire to overcome this challenging passage in your life, you really will make your voice heard once again, and sooner than you think. Wishing you good luck and great health. I'm Jordan Rich.